This is part 2 of what may be 3 or 4 parts of the refurbishing the 70s Rockola jukebox. I had to put it back on the horses here to look at the gripper bow carefully with you. Notice that we have disengaged both motors, and I showed you that before below. So this allows the magazine motor, once the magazine motor is disengaged, you can move the record magazine, and note that that moves the readout assembly, and you want to just move it around to be sure there's no bindings. The same with the gripper bow here. Now we're going to assume that this one is frozen up, and I'm going to show you how to unfreeze it, but it's not. But at any rate, you still want to see how the gripper bow comes out and the relationships here, how it pulls in at the end to release the record on both over the magazine and over the turntable, which has been removed. Now I want you to look at this carefully here, the relationship of the gears there in the on the gripper bow in the rest or home position. Just make a note of that and how those pins pretty much line up, and maybe take a picture of that, because if you get mixed up later or this gear falls off, you want to be sure you get it back on right, and this is the relationship you want to see. Now I will remove or loosen this screw here so I can get inside this gripper bow and get these two gears and get lubrication down in there, and then you just try to, assuming it's you just try to work it back. See what the first motion is there? It's actually this gear moving ahead of the inner gear, see? So, and then they both start to go. So that you want to get familiar with that. If simple lubrication doesn't do it, then and getting oil down in there, what I'll do next is a heat gun to this area, avoiding the plastic here for sure, but put it on low heat and often then keep working it. And if that doesn't do it, I would, since you know this gear is going to move first, you can put a screwdriver here and just gently torque it a bit to get it started. And often that will free it up. You'll see it move a little bit, and then when you start going back and forth with more lubrication, lo and behold, it'll free up. And then that's almost always been successful, and I'm been able to avoid having to take this apart and punch out pins. There are other videos that show you how to do that, but fortunately I haven't had to do that. Now I want to show you back here the microswitches. This is microswitch 1, 3, and 2A and 2B. Now note in the home position, that top microswitch cam has to be down in the divot. And then when the record's all the way out, it will be out of the divot. And this one, number 3, right here, starts out of the divot, and when it turns all the way to the end, it will go down in the divot. And that's important. If that doesn't happen, that could foul up your record rejection process. I just want to point that out. Finishing up on lubrication, you can certainly lubricate the gears here that mesh to operate the popularity meter. You should lubricate the gears here on the right-in motor. There is a slot adjustment on the right-in motor right here, that in case there's too much slack in the right-in motor, you can mesh the gears a little more snugly and eliminate that. Please note that this should move freely, and if it doesn't, you have to determine why. The motor should be free, and this allows you to access all these circuit boards, because this all now has to be cleaned. All of these contacts need to be cleaned thoroughly, as well as the wipers that are going past right there. I hope you can see them right there. There. Yeah, get 600 sandpaper and CRC and clean every single contact, and do it twice, and you can access it by just moving the arms. Or this is the double right-in arm 160 model, so Sometimes you only have one, but you can move them out of the way and get this clean. Same over here. Clean these meticulously. The readout circuit boards, the wipers, the same. And you also have to clean these pins, because when they get displaced, the plate control relay starts. That pin not only is a mechanical connection, it's also an electrical one. So all these have to be cleaned with CRC and fine sandpaper so that they're shiny. And when they're displaced and the readout arm comes around and hits it, there's a nice clean electrical connection there to occur. And as I mentioned, the readout arms go with the magazine. They rotate together, and certainly you want to rotate always with the to clean the contacts. You always want to rotate so that the wipers are going forward, not in reverse. I think we've covered the three main things on the mechanism then: the lubrication, looking at the dog ear and making sure that's free, and then meticulously cleaning all the circuit boards, wipers, and that also includes over here. This was the light sequencer over here. These screws have to be taken off, and this removed, and then clean the contacts and wipers. It's pretty self-explanatory. It's not difficult, but you want all your lights to work going on the selection process. It looks cool, so do that. Before we leave and move on to the selector system, I should say a word about the motors. That was my fault. The turntable motor does not need much maintenance. You would put a drop of oil down at the motor juncture with the shaft. Keep obviously the spindle clean with alcohol, and you should replace always the 3 turntable grommets so the turntable sits up and flush with the wheel. Note that the top part of the spindle is for 33s. You want to intersect here at the second part, a little wider. The wider the shaft, the faster the speed, so it would be 45 RPM would be this section. Make sure the turntable rubber wheel is clean. If you're going to store this box for a long period of time and not before you get to it, separate the idler wheel from the shaft so you don't get a pressure divot in your idler wheel that often happens if they've sat under the spring pressure for years and years. It'll save you 30 bucks. All right, that's enough for and then of course oil the down into the turntable shaft. As far as the gripper and magazine motors, they're identical except the magazine motor has a little wider, more gear on it so it goes a little bit faster. I don't do a whole lot with these motors, but the very minimum, you would take the 2 end screws out, as I've done here, separate this, pull this out, and just watch the washers so they don't. And you certainly want to put some extra grease down in there, clean it up a bit, put extra grease on the worm drive, oil here, and then put it back in. Up at this end, it's hard to see, but the brushes here look to be good. At the very minimum, spray some CRC and then clean the commutator shaft. I'm sorry, I don't know if I can show this well enough or not, but actually the commutator shaft on this one looks pretty darn good, but at least clean it up. Then oil the end of the shaft here, and you should be done. Check your function forward and back, and okay, that's about it. Let's move on to the selector system. Before we go to the third video, or part 3 on the selector system, I wanted to mention the control box which sits under the mechanism. I haven't had any problem with this in the 10 boxes I've brought back to life, but I should mention it as an interlock relay and a gripper reverse relay, and if you have problems with the record being returned to the magazine after it's finished playing, you may have to look in this area and clean the contacts. It's difficult to access. It's underneath. You'll have to almost crawl under the mech or access it from below. But it has not been a problem, but I wanted to mention it. Okay, on to video 3. Thank you.